What's up, everybody? I'm John Middlekauff. You know what I need you to do. Subscribe to our YouTube channel. We got content for days reacting to every NFL game all the time, every single day. Subscribe, like the videos. Let's go. What is going on, everybody? How are we doing? Very, very excited. The draft is here. We are officially draft week. Couple days away. Lot planned. We will have stuff every single day the rest of the week, as well as I think going on with Colin Thursday. We'll have Jay Gruden on this week. I'll have all thoughts and content and podcasts and videos coming full throttle. So buckle up. It's a big, big week. And today we're going to just empty the mailbag because I don't know how much time we will have for that the rest of this week. Big reason is because I haven't had power all day. It's about 6 o'clock at night. My power has been out because we have electricians here. Shows you how dependent we are on the internet. I felt like a caged cat. I haven't been able to do anything. We are very dependent on this little thing called the internet, especially as podcasters. So I'm recording this way later. So I'm going to do a big, massive mailbag today. Try to answer most of your guys' questions that I've not got to yet. At John Middlekauff, fire in those DMs. Get your questions answered on the show. And that will be the game plan for Monday night, because I usually, during the offseason, do not do night podcasts, but that's what you got to do when your power is out. Other than that, I got to tell you about my friends, my partners, and the official ticketing app of this podcast. Now, listen, I may hate the Lakers and root against them no matter what, any time of year, especially in the playoffs. But I understand there's a lot of Laker fans. They are a massive brand. So if you're one of those and you want to catch your team, can they bounce back and not go down 0-2 to the Minnesota Timberwolves or any of your teams? Maybe you won, maybe you lost. You want to go to an NBA playoff game. You want to go to a baseball game. You live in San Diego? The Padres, they look pretty good. Do you want to watch the Yankees? I saw Aaron Boone. He got tossed. Why? He was arguing a ball that was a home run by Aaron Judge. They claimed it was foul. It was clearly fair. So a lot going on in the sports world, as well as concerts, as well as comedy shows. They got you covered. Any event you want to go to. I was just home for Easter for like 36 hours. My brother said he's going to concerts. He did it because of Game Time. They got you covered. You can search by venue. You can search by event. You can search by artist or team. Doesn't get any easier. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, use the code JOHN for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply again. Create an account, redeem the code JOHN for $20 off. Download the Game Time app today. Last minute tickets, lowest prices guaranteed. It's funny, you don't have internet all day, your phone dies, you have no way to charge it, and then it finally comes back on, and you realize that Nico goes to UCLA, and the UCLA quarterback, all signs point to him going to Tennessee. So you never know what's going to happen in this crazy, crazy world of college football. I saw the dude Tyler Shuck, I think is the way you pronounce his name. There's a prom picture going viral. I guess it's been kind of viral, of him and Brock Purdy from like 2017. They're the same age. Actually, Brock Purdy is younger than the quarterback that is going into the draft from Louisville. This guy has been in college for 7 years. I knew he was old. I didn't realize he was that old. Brock Purdy was a 4-year starter in college, has been starting now in the NFL for 3 years, and is younger than this player coming out in the draft. You should not be able to go to college for 7 years unless you're going to be a doctor. I mean, that's insane. I mean, we are in the middle of the most batshit era in the history of college sports. I mean, this guy played for 7 years. He had multiple careers at multiple schools. Doesn't even count the one he's going to get drafted from. I mean, the Nico situation, do take a pay cut to go to UCLA. Grew up a huge UCLA fan. Jason Capono. I had a good family friend, John Hofert, who played at UCLA. I love those UCLA basketball teams. My cousin Nick was a walk-on for Bob Toledo in the football program in the late 90s, early 2000s. I love UCLA, or did as a kid. I rooted for them. Basketball and football very, very aggressively. But that program is a joke. I mean, an absolute joke. I read an article. They ranked in the Big Ten that has 16 programs, 15th. Ticket sales in the tank. The athletic program has lost $200 million in the last 5 years. Let me repeat that. $200 million in the last 5 years. Beautiful campus. They're awesome at sports like gymnastics and golf and occasionally baseball. But when it comes to a football program, listen, all, personal thoughts aside, Chip Kelly left that program because he thought it was a complete joke. And we can argue like he wanted no part of them. So to go to UCLA, I'm not even counting the financial haircut that you get by leaving Tennessee, the state with no state income tax, to go to LA, on top of how shady SEC programs are, what else they're funneling you. Took a massive haircut financially. Not even counting that. From a football standpoint, in what world would you leave Tennessee, which by all accounts, I looked on Rivals the other day, they have been top 12 in recruiting like the last 3 years. They will continue to be that. They were just in the playoffs. It would shock absolutely nobody if they're in the playoffs again. It would be stunning if UCLA makes a bowl game. This is a program in football. SEC, football means everything, especially the top programs. Bama, LSU, Georgia, Florida, Tennessee, A&M, like kind of a big deal to play in those programs. There's a reason the most guys in the country get drafted from that conference. Doesn't get any better. And they pay a premium. To leave, it's just, it's fucking laughable. There's no other response than that is laughable the way it all played out. Not even talking about the money standpoint, but from a football standpoint, not in a million years. I've never had a problem. If Ashton Jeanty wanted to leave Boise State and go play at Ohio State or Texas or, Oregon, totally would have got it. Everyone's like, no brainer. Of course you do that. If some dude is playing at Cam Ward, Washington State, goes to Miami, we all get it. It's called leveling up. We all try to do that professionally, personally, level up in life. You don't level down in life when it's your choice. One thing if you get kicked out of the program, and nowadays people get cut, right? But you don't leave to go to a way worse program. Makes absolutely no sense. Again, laughable. Really is. I mean, it's crazy. The advice, I thought Cam Newton said it best, like, bad advice can cripple you at the highest levels. And definitely in the NFL, when it comes to financial advice, in college now, when people are advising you, good advice is extremely valuable. It really is. And the advice in this whole situation seems honestly kind of sad. That's what it does. It's pretty sad. There ain't a soul alive if they could choose what's a better football situation. Playing at the University of Tennessee, which probably going to have a top 10 roster in college football, or UCLA. This is 2025. I mean, this isn't back in the heyday. UCLA has been good at football over the years. Not right now. The NBA 82-game grind is done, and now the real fun begins. The NBA playoffs are here, and it's time for the high-stakes drama, clutch moments, and jaw-dropping plays. Can't wait. If you're looking to make the playoffs even more exciting, DraftKings Sportsbook has you covered as an official sports betting partner of the NBA. From the play-in games all the way through the finals. Now, the time to back your favorite players and teams as they chase glory. All season long, DraftKings has been your go-to spot for NBA player props, and that doesn't stop now. Want to make your playoff experience even more intense? Try placing a bet on your favorite player's performance. Will Curry drop 30? Will LeBron drop 40? Or more? It's your call. Ready to place your first bet? Download the DraftKings Sportsbook app now, lock in your bets, and let's make the playoff run unforgettable. Here's something special for first-timers. New DraftKings customers bet $5 to get $200 in bonus bets instantly. Make it a playoff run to remember with DraftKings. Download the DraftKings Sportsbook app and use the code JOHN. That's code JOHN for new customers to get $200 in bonus bets when you bet just $5. Only on DraftKings. The crown is yours. Let's dive into the mailbag, which I guess that was kind of the start of the mailbag. Quick question. Is Milroe in the first round another Will Levis situation, just a complete bluff, or are you hearing this is real? Well, you get invited to the draft. That's, a pretty big eye-opener. Now, I think you could ask yourself, if you're the television networks, I know people have pushed against this, but it doesn't hurt to have quarterbacks who are way more famous than all these other players. There's a reason we on this show don't break down offensive linemen. Our sponsors are paying us too much to get people to listen to have people tune out. I like football as much as the next guy, but I've been in this business long enough. You are as, the draft and the buzz on last year is one of the biggest, lead ups I've ever seen. It's not random that 6 quarterbacks got drafted in the top 12. They're the drivers, and I would say wide receivers are right behind them. If the top players in your draft are tackles, guards, and D tackles, you're going to have problems, right? Travis, you can only talk about Travis Hunter playing both ways so much. But I think there's a very good chance that there's some drama with these quarterbacks, you know, in the green room with not being selected. Uh, I've seen some interviews online with Jalen Milroe. Seems like a really high level dude. Seems like an easy guy to root for. But ultimately, at the highest level of football, you do need to complete passes. We can nitpick Shador's physical attributes, holds on to the ball a little bit too long, not the biggest arm, not the greatest athlete, but he's a pretty good quarterback. Like, he knows how to play quarterback. I watched Jalen Milroe. Subtract that first half against Georgia, where he looked like the number one overall pick. You just watch that first half against Georgia, you're like, this is the best player in the country. Problem is, that wasn't normal. There was a lot of skipping balls. I mean, you watch a little bit of the Michigan game. It was tough in the bowl game. I mean, it was a tough watch. But I don't know. I don't really know what to make of it. I'm sure there are people that like him. If you told me take a flyer on him in the second round, hopefully catch lightning in a bottle with a project, totally understand. Taking that type guy in the first round seems a little aggressive. We've seen with Anthony Richardson, a lot of times these projects do not turn into Josh Allen. They're Anthony Richardson. So those projects, swinging for the fences at quarterback, damn, if you got to take the guy high, it's pretty risky. And sometimes, Jordan Love was a project. He got to sit for 3 years. It's pretty abnormal. Was watching the Gruden quarterback camps with Kyle McCord, Riley Leonard, and Will Howard. These guys seem like good prospects, and I haven't seen anything on Quinn Ewers. Most of them were deep into the playoffs. I just don't understand why nobody is talking about these guys and acting like this is an awful quarterback draft. Well, if some of your main players, and obviously Will Howard's really famous, starting quarterback, Ohio State national championship. Riley Leonard transfers to Notre Dame. They're in the national championship. I mean, those guys. Kyle McCord started at Ohio State, then goes to Syracuse and has a great year. So anytime that you play at Ohio State or Notre Dame at quarterback, your name, Quinn Ewers, same thing, at University of Texas. None of those guys are viewed as first-round picks. So when there is a group that's going to go from second round, third round, fourth round, fifth round, we know that 50% of first-round players do not turn out to be long-term solutions at any position, let alone quarterback. So the hit rate as you get in the third and fourth round, for every Kirk Cousins and Dak Prescott, there are a ton of guys that are lifetime backups / out of the league relatively soon. And I've been doing this for a long time, whether it was when I was in college football, watching the guys go in and seeing guys, at Fresno State, undrafted free agents have 7, 8, 9-year careers, and seeing guys get drafted in the first round and be out of the league in 4 or 5 years and be locked backups by like their second year. I love the draft, and I can't wait to talk about it, even if this isn't a great quote unquote sizzle, big name, star-studded event. I still enjoy it. But it's also very difficult, and I was going to do something, and I'll probably save it for maybe on Thursday. Like, we make such a big deal, and I'm guilty of this. Get excited, get down on different teams' drafts, yet no one has any clue. Absolutely no one has any clue. There occasionally are picks like Von Miller. It's like, you draft Von Miller, it's going to work out, right? You draft Joe Thomas. I mean, there are certain picks that are like, yeah, this is going to work out. But I would say the overwhelming majority, I'm talking first-round picks, let alone dudes in like the 4th, 5th, 6th round. No one was like, oh, Seattle Seahawks just drafted Richard Sherman. That's going to be one of the great picks in the history of the league. No one says that. And then 5 years later, it's like, that's one of the great picks John Schneider will ever have, 5th round. George Kittle, it's like, oh, the Niners got him in the 5th round. Why did he fall that far? What's the deal there? And then like 4 or 5 years later, it's like, is that one of the greatest picks in the history of the franchise? We don't have any of this information when guys are picked. So much can happen. I struggle with especially a quarterback making predictions. I think all those guys, like one of them probably will be some version of like, I don't know, even if they're not a top 10 quarterback, maybe an Andy Dalton or Kirk Cousins at one point in time was probably a top 10 quarterback. Derek Carr, Jimmy Garoppolo. But which one out of those three is going to be that? Who knows? Absolutely no one has a clue. Because if they did, none of the GMs in the NFL knew. Because if they knew, there's no way that guy would make it past like pick 35. And all those guys will. The NFL provides so many threads to follow, supplying awesome content for speculation and discussion. I'm currently fascinated with quarterbacks who might be good, but for some reason or other, don't get the chance to prove it. For instance, Jake Browning played very well when Joe Burrow was out, but we don't hear anything about him. I'm currently fascinated with Tyson Bagent, who's the Bears players reportedly wanted to start instead of Caleb when he was struggling. What is your take on this topic? Tyson specifically. Because I don't want to screw up his last name. Bagent, Tyson Bagent is I think the way I said it. Could Tyson be the next Tom Brady, but never get a chance due to Caleb's hype and contract? What are your thoughts? I think you get pigeonholed. If you use Jake Browning, I'm pretty sure Jake Browning was a undrafted free agent. Now, full disclosure, I watched a lot of Jake Browning. He's from Folsom High School in Sacramento, and he was Washington's quarterback for 4 years with Chris Peterson. One of the years, it might have been his first or second year, they made the playoffs and they played Alabama in the playoffs, and they got dismantled. I mean, they got crushed. Their two receivers were John Ross and Pettis. Ross obviously went 8th, 10th in the draft, and Pettis went second round of the Niners. But while they were good in college, obviously both were disasters in the pros relative to their draft slots. I thought Jake Browning was in no way an NFL player. I thought his arm was putrid. I just didn't think he was an NFL player. Clearly, high level cat. I mean, really, really high level guy. If you look at Chris Peterson's two most successful quarterbacks, Kellen Moore, Jake Browning, really smart. Both lack some physical limitations. But I watched Jake Browning. I felt like his arm was stronger at 28, 29 years old than it was a lot earlier in his career. And some guys, like Alex Smith's arm was always what it was. Some guys' arm gets stronger. Tom Brady's did. You use Tyson as an example. When you use Jake did come from a big time program. And now has been Joe Burrow's backup. He started games in the NFL. So it's like played at a big time program, won a lot in a major conference. Tyson, I'm pretty sure when he started 2 years ago, or maybe it was 3 years ago, when what's his name, Justin Fields got hurt. So it wouldn't have been Caleb's year; it would have been Fields' last year. I think he was the first rookie, undrafted free agent from a Division II school to ever make a start in the NFL. So you're going to be discriminated against just automatically being a super small school guy. I just pulled up his wiki. I remember this. He went to Shepherd College. I have no clue where that is. Absolutely none. I think I do because I remember him telling a story about running. Is it West Virginia? Is where Shepherd is? Quarterback for the Shepherd Rams against Ohio. Yeah, it's in. He's from West Virginia. Shepherd is in. Yeah, it's in West Virginia. I think it is very, very difficult to give someone the opportunity to be your starter. So let's say Tyson never gets to play again. Remember Matt Ryan on Hard Knocks looked at Ryan Poles, was like, this guy's good. And he probably is pretty good. What it will take is a former coach, so someone that was on the coaching staff at another program to be like, we should sign this guy, even if as a backup. And then maybe that starter gets hurt, and then that guy gets the opportunity to play. But for the most part, to become Matt Schaub or Jimmy Garoppolo, those guys were high picks. Not first round picks, but second and third round picks. I think Matt Schaub actually might have been a second round pick too. So people believe that you can start when you're the backup. When you are an undrafted free agent, people just look at you like you're not good enough unless you get the opportunity to then run with it. Now, Jake Browning, how many starts did he actually get? Obviously, last year, Burrow was healthy. But 2 years ago, he got 7 starts through 12 touchdowns, 70% completion percentage. I bet he'll get a job, as a backup whenever his Cincinnati situation runs out. He's still under contract with them. but he was an undrafted free agent in 19. We're going into 25. I mean, he's going to have a 10 plus year career now. Like guys like that, like he's already passed, I'd rather have him than Zach Wilson or Trey Lance or Kenny Pickett and those guys for sure. But are they the next Tom Brady? Probably not. But I hear what you're saying. It's a fascinating conversation. And I do think it's difficult to break out. I think this is true for anything in life. When you get pigeonholed as something, it's hard to establish yourself as the next thing up. Right? I'm sure a lot of people listening to this have interned somewhere and then maybe got hired there out of college. Like maybe you intern your senior year in college, going into your senior year. And then they hire you full time when you graduate. And they always kind of look at you like, he's the kind of the small guy in the totem pole. And then you have to go somewhere else to another company potentially to get that respect. I think sometimes it's like that in sports. So if you want to prove that you're a starting quarterback, you almost need to go somewhere else and get a fresh start. Look at Sam Darnold. Took him a couple times. Now, bad example because he was a third overall pick. So we give a longer leash of optimism to guys drafted high. It's pretty crazy how fast it happened to, I would say, the crew in 21, but it shows you what a fugazi the 2020 football season was. Trey Lance, Zach Wilson, Mac Jones. I mean, Fields has more physical attributes than those guys, so he keeps getting more shots. But the other guys are jokes. Zach Wilson, maybe not. We'll see. But to me, Mac Jones, I back up at best. Trey Lance is a third stringer. So the more you play, the more you can get exposed. And the less you play, the more you can just kind of hold on. So I don't have a great answer for you, but fascinating topic where there's never going to be an answer. Diehard Charger fan. We got Harbaugh and Herbert in his prime. I'm elated to say the least. When we lost to the Texans, I just kind of looked at this as a bad game. And then the All-22 came out. We got a film grinder here. After all the clips came out, I came away feeling even worse. Herbert looked lost. Some of his passes were inexcusable. He looked like he didn't even belong. We all know that he's immensely talented and makes every single pass, but my question to you, when does arm talent actually translate? Big games wins. Not quite. I would chalk this up of like, you got a bad game. Like, I don't think you can write his career based on a bad playoff game. He's going to be okay. Maybe he won't be, but I would still be bullish on the player. Phillip Rivers had a ton of bad games, and you were in good position with him as your quarterback for a decade plus. And that's in his like 30s. This guy is dramatically more talented than Phillip Rivers. So you have an elite coach. You had an awful, embarrassing game. It happens. It doesn't happen often to like Tom Brady and Aaron Rodgers and Peyton Manning. But maybe this guy's not that. Lamar Jackson's had some bad games in the playoffs, like really bad games before last year. So I think you just gotta. Peyton Manning had some inexcusable bad performances early in his career. I'm not comparing all these players like to each other in the sense of like Justin Herbert's going to be Lamar Jackson, win 2 MVPs, and lead you to the number 1 seeds, or he's going to be Peyton Manning. But it's like there are a lot of players that have had bad playoff games. This is not the NBA or the Major League Baseball, where you can have a bad game in a series and you get 6 more chances at it, or you're guaranteed another couple games. It's football. You have one bad game, you're done. Like the NCAA tournament. John Calipari had some bad games his last 5 years at Kentucky, and he's out in the first or second round. So I just think you just got to be optimistic, because I would be. And I don't have a dog in the fight beside I root for Jim Harbaugh. I like Justin Herbert, but it's like I'm not an Oregon guy necessarily. Though, I mean, I'm a West Coast Pac-12 guy, but they're in the Big Ten now. He's an easy guy to root for, but I wouldn't stake my life savings on that he's going to be some superstar. But I'm pretty confident that he's going to have a very, very positive career. I would say there are bright days ahead. Big draft for the Chargers to get some skill guys. Watch all the episodes. I'm a lifelong Jets fan. I just saw Colin's take on the Rodgers breakup, and I'm confused by his reaction, and a lot of the media's reaction to it as well. Seems like the world is always against the Jets. No matter what they do, it'll be wrong. I think they made the right move, especially with the new regime coming in. My question is, why does everyone hate us? I know the top is incompetent at times, but the future feels brighter. Can the mood change? And will we forever be the same old Jets? I think when you get caught up in the circle of as a team that, I've used this example before, but like Bill Simmons, back when he wrote a column, had the Tyson zone, and there were certain things that fell in that, like when a story would come out about Donald Sterling and the Clippers, or when a story would come out about Whitney Houston or Michael Jackson. There was nothing crazy enough that you wouldn't believe. I do believe there's some sort of like dysfunctional zone, fair or not. Once you enter that like arena, it is hard to break out of. I'm from Davis, California, which is separated from Sacramento by a thing called the Causeway. Little game called the Causeway Classic, UC Davis versus Sacramento State. And when you cross that causeway, the, I guess the arena is actually closer now. The Sacramento Kings play in downtown Sacramento. They used to play in Natomas at Arco Arena, which was an old school arena. I think they blew it up. Maybe it's still erect, but they play in this new, actually really beautiful Golden One arena. When you bring up the Kings, there is nothing that the Sacramento Kings could do that you wouldn't believe. It's like they fired everyone in the organization. Vivek fired the GM and the coach. No, like every single employee. He's going to hire from scratch. You'd be like, seems crazy, but it's believable. It's like when the Jets came out, not even that crazy. They offered 175 people of their 250 employees a year, whatever the severance calculator was, like 3 weeks for every year you'd work for the organization. Maybe it was 5 weeks, whatever the number was, to leave. It was like, yeah, it's the Jets. Even though it's not even that crazy when you say it out loud, but it is kind of crazy because no one else does that. I think when you get caught in that cycle of like, yeah, I believe that would happen. I saw it forever when the Raiders kind of were going through their moving thing in the mid 2010s. You could be like, yeah, Mark Davis is going to pick up the team and move. They start throwing out random, like they're going to move to Austin, Texas. They've looked at Boise, Idaho. They just start throwing out random cities like Portland, Oregon. It's like you just started kind of like, yeah, I don't think it's going to happen, but they just start throwing shit at the wall. That's kind of the world the Jets are in. Because I'm with you. Aaron Rodgers was butthurt that he flew himself out there when they could have told him, like, being fired is not easy. I bet Aaron Glenn looked at it like, I'd rather say it to his face than say it over the phone. And again, I'm taking an educated guess here, but he's a former player, played in the NFL forever. It's like maybe he's like, it'd be better if I could say it to his face. Aaron Rodgers, who has no history with ever being told, you're fired, you're cut, pack your shit, clean out your locker room. It's like a beautiful girl. She's used to being treated a little differently than most of us, right? When she walks into a bar, when she walks into a club, when she just lives her life. If all of a sudden one day she woke up and she was ugly, it would probably be a pretty tough transition because she was used to being treated one way. Now she's probably going to be treated a little different just in everyday society. Aaron Rodgers once was an elite. He was as good at doing what is impossible as anyone in the history of football. They just don't exist. We have a short list. We all consider him, even if you're a Rodgers hater, we all agree he's like, I don't know, one of the top 10 greatest quarterbacks in the history of a sport that's been playing at a really high level now for, even if you don't want to count like the 50, 60, some of those years, like, I don't know, 50 plus years. He's one of the 10 best to ever do it. He replaced Brett Favre, and I think most people remove the emotion. Brett was a more enjoyable player to watch play, I think. Now, maybe it's a little nostalgia. I was younger, but Aaron's a better player. So he's whatever he always wanted, he got. Money, status. For the first time in his professional life, he kind of got treated like everyone else. And when you not used to getting treated like everyone else, it's probably going to be pretty humbling. It's one thing if you grew up poor and then you make a bunch of money, and by the time you're 50, you are considered really, really rich and you live a great life. big homes, private jets, country clubs, you name it. You do have the perspective of what it was like not having a pot to piss in when I was 25, starting from nothing. Kids can't relate to that, right? So it's about perspective. Most human beings in the NFL, the draft's about to happen. Most guys that will get drafted, it's a humbling experience. They don't go as high as they thought. Half of them will get cut before the regular season starts. They have to go practice squad. They won't become starters. They'll have to, even the guys that get to play, many of them will struggle. It'll just be a learning, it'll be tough. Aaron's had to wait a little bit to play, but for the last 17 years, he's been considered an elite. I mean, one of the top, like Brady, Manning, Rodgers. That's what we talked about. And now Aaron Glenn's like, you're done. Even he can say, I saw it coming. Yeah, I've been fired when I saw it coming. It's still humbling to hear. I don't care who you are. And I definitely wasn't the equivalent of Aaron Rodgers when it happened to me. Many of you that have, lost a job or been laid off or whatever, even if you don't even want to be there, even if you're looking for other gigs, even if you have another job lined up, I just think, I don't think what the Jets did was that crazy. There's no perfect way to fire anyone ever. Question for the mailbag. I grew up in Philly and love the Eagles. I'm 25, and overall, I've seen consistent great football. You've lived a pretty good life. Something I always think about. If I were an NFL player or prospect, what are the top 5 teams I want to get drafted by, traded to, or sign with as a free agent? And inversely, what are the 5 teams I'd hate to end up with? Bias aside, it feels like Philly has become one of the most desirable destinations in the league. You've got sustained success, a front office that takes care of stars early, a national spotlight, and a top-tier franchise in a massive sports market. Do you think like this in terms of dream destinations across the league? What are the top 5 teams you would be ecstatic to land with right now, and also the bottom 5? Well, obviously, if you could choose, you would want to go to the good teams, right? But I think sometimes if you're a player, right, if I'm a rookie, would I rather be drafted 3rd overall and go to the Giants, or fall to the end of the 1st round and go 32nd to the Eagles? I think it's easy to go, you'd rather go to the Eagles. But I think sometimes if you're a player, you go, well, I get way more money and a way worse team where I get to shine. So I think it's different as a drafted player. And things in the NFL change really fast. Like if you were drafted the Lions 4 years ago, it's like, God, you got drafted the Lions? That's where you're going. And now it's like, what a great football spot to be in. Obviously, there are teams, the Ravens with Howie, with Andy and Veach, the Bills now with Josh. I mean, there are certain teams that are going to be pretty good to play in, right? But also, if you're on the Eagles, what position do you play? Because if I'm drafted to the Eagles and I'm a wide receiver, I might not play. So would I rather go to a team that has a crappier – would I rather go to the Raiders and maybe have a chance to be a star and then improve my status when I do hit free agency? So I think when you're a free agent, 100%, you would rather go to the Chiefs, all the good teams. But they usually have the least amount of money. And in a league that if you do hit free agency, like there's a reason you're not like a top tier player. Like look at free agency every year. It's not, the days of Reggie White hitting free agency are kind of dead. So it's who's the best? Milton Williams was like the apple of everyone's eye. The dude played 50% of the snaps last year for the Eagles. And again, Howie didn't even hesitate. He's like, see you, buddy. Good Godspeed. So I think in football, you got to look at this a little bit differently sometimes. Now, if all things are equal, if I'm like just a solid starter and I can get $5 million from one of the good teams or the Jags, it's a no-brainer. But it's not usually the way it works. So I hear what you're saying. It's not quite like college football that way, where it's like, of course, if I go to Alabama, Georgia, Ohio State, Texas, I go there, right, over Mississippi State, or I'm trying to think of Arizona or Arizona State. You'd much rather go to Oregon. But in the pros, things can change pretty quickly. So I think I don't know if you really look at it like that. But from an overall standpoint, yeah, your organization right now is elite. Question for the bag. Do you think the NFL should take an approach when it comes to the draft order selection? Instead of going by worst to best records and automatically giving the number 1 pick to the worst team, Should they do a lottery? Uh, High pick, but 100% of the teams that could have good records, slim chance getting a high draft pick. Your thoughts? It's a good question. I would imagine they already would have done this if this is something that was of interest. Because think how often in the pros that they just try different stuff. You would say no league randomly tries stuff more than the NFL, especially when it comes to their television product. It's like Christmas, we'll take over Christmas. We'll do Saturday games, post college football, we'll bunch of Saturday games. I think the NFL, they're constantly throwing every idea possible. This feels like something that doesn't interest them at all. I do believe that in like Wednesday of like wild card weekend, imagine if you just held the lottery. I mean, it was just the lottery of the NFL. I think it would do huge numbers. A little surprised that it's never even come up. But I have never heard anyone that like covers the NFL. It's like one thing on the docket at the owners' meetings, discussion on a draft lottery. I wouldn't complain if they did it, but it does feel like something that's not of interest to them. Maybe because a huge part of the success of the NFL in theory is parity, though they're very driven by the top teams. I don't know. It'd be fascinating to get like Raj and a couple owners and ask why they would never even entertain it. Question for the pod. Fun question. I'm from Texas. I love watching both who had a bigger impact on college football between Johnny Manziel and Vince Young. Easy to say Vince because of the ring, but Johnny's influence was insane. I think you could have like an argument of like culturally, like who was more important when I was like in junior high and high school? Allen Iverson or Kobe Bryant? Well, Kobe was the much better player, much more accomplished player, but it felt like Allen Iverson had this huge cultural impact, right? But Kobe was a winner, the dude that, like, as time went on, everyone aspired to work out like him, even though AI was drinking all night and then playing the next day and dropping 45. I think there's an element like Vince Young in college had one of the most memorable games of my lifetime, any sport. Him beating USC, which I still think is the highest rated championship game ever, one of the great teams we've ever seen in the history of the sport, and his iconic touchdown run was the moment that beat SC in LA. It felt like they had they lost a game in like 2 years. So from a more accomplished player would be Vince, national champion, got drafted really high. In terms of cultural impact, and I would say lasting impact that we still feel today, it feels like Johnny. I mean, Johnny won the Heisman as a redshirt freshman, which could be wrong to some of you college historians. Was he the youngest player to ever win the Heisman Trophy? Because before it was only juniors and seniors winning it. Again, did Tebow win it? I'd probably get scolded by some of you diehards, but I would say culturally Johnny Manziel for sure. Good question. What are your thoughts on the ceiling of JJ? As a lifelong Vikings fan, it's given me very pessimistic view of our future. Why Darnold somewhat collapsed in the last two games. I love Darnold, but it's okay to say to remove the somewhat. I don't think it was all his fault. He was the first quarterback we've had since Favre that gave me real optimism. While I feel like we have a great roster, I know how bad the season could still go if the quarterback situation goes to complete shit. I'm torn because just that preseason game, I remember he had a sweet touchdown throw. You saw some physical attributes. It was really, really impressive. But been doing this long enough to know I think you got to be very careful in the preseason. And anytime you get injured early, it can derail the start of your career from a physical standpoint. Obviously, he lost some weight. And I think there's a pressure on a guy that's going to a really, really good team. Obviously, he did in college. He took over a team that had really high expectations. A couple years later, they won the national championship. The pressures in the NFL are pretty high, are higher than even at Michigan, especially when you factor in they just had one of the best records in the NFL, and he's taken over a roster that's improved. So I think the non-tangible stuff is really hard. And before, his Michigan team, the coach was the star. So Jim took so much pressure off JJ. The way they played, Their entire offensive and defensive lines were drafted and are going to get drafted. They had 15 guys drafted last year. They're going to have 4 guys drafted in the top 30 this year. I mean, that team was like an Alabama team. It doesn't get any better. There's a reason they beat the shit out of everybody. Hell, they beat Nick Saban on his last game. I mean, they who had multiple players get drafted really high the following year. So I think it's really, really difficult. It's hard for me to say how high a ceiling is because he's not the most physically gifted guy. He's clearly pretty talented. I mean, a lot of people were comparing him to Alex Smith comps. Now, if he's Alex Smith, they'd be fine. But Alex Smith didn't become Alex Smith till 6, 7, 8 years into the NFL. Now, Alex also had Singletary as his coach. So you get Kevin O'Connell, you get a high-level organization. Cool is the wrong word. It's an advantageous landing spot and starting spot, just like going to Michigan was for him. But it is a difficult spot. And the thing is in pros, especially pro football, because every game is so magnified, what if you just start slow? And all of a sudden the Vikings are 2-2. And he's kind of playing shitty. It's just chirp, 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 chirp. It'd be a lot. Since it's draft week, it got me thinking, do you think teams put too much value into the first round? If I'm a GM and it hits 50% of the first round picks, we're doing great. I understand teams who have multiple holes to fill. If not trading away picks, I just don't feel like the upper tier teams, Lions, Bills, Ravens, etc., really make those moves either and are willing to draft a player and then go without a first round pick for a year and then trade for a plug and play star. Love to get your thoughts. You either mean, should I trade up to get a plug and play impact player or trade back to try to get more picks? I saw today that Adam Schefter put out the 49ers want to get out, are willing to trade back. I think most teams in this draft would gladly go from pick 8 to 15 and pick up some seconds and some thirds. I think the Niners wouldn't hesitate to go from 11 to 20 and pick up a second round pick. I think I saw a headline. This would have been 3 or 4 days ago. I went home for Easter, so I was in the plane. It was kind of a crazy. We went home for less than 30 hours. It was a quick trip, honestly, easy. But you're in the airport, you're kind of on your phone, and you're getting on the plane, so a lot of stuff's going on. I think Schefter put this out. This is the first time there has not been a draft day trade or a trade for draft picks leading into a draft since Joe Montana, who got traded 5 days before the draft. Because this draft's not very good. To the GMs. I'm not just saying that to say it. It's the GMs don't view this draft. I saw McShay say today, and he's right, that if you just went all the top positions on offense, the best quarterback in this draft, Cam Ward, he would probably be the 4th or 5th quarterback last year. The best offensive lineman in this draft would be the 4th or 5th offensive lineman last year. The best wide receiver in this draft would be the 5th or 6th wide receiver last year. The best Abdul Carter. Now, he would be high, but a lot of these guys, we're talking about a drop-off from last year. So sometimes when teams are willing to trade up, they want impact players. A couple years ago, when Will Anderson, that when the Texans traded up from pick, when they drafted C.J. Stroud, and then they trade all the way back up to get Will Anderson, because I thought Will Anderson was sweet, because he kind of is. I like Will Anderson on my team. So I think you look at this draft, teams are cold feet's the wrong word, but just why do I need? It's like a market, right? When I bought my condo, when I first bought a place, 2016, you were bidding against 15 people in the Bay Area. And for a long period of time, low interest rates, constantly bidding against people. Why? Because low interest rates, people had money, you could borrow money for nothing. It was just aggressive. Well, when I bought the house I'm in right now, interest rates were going up by the week. It's 5, 5.5, 6. Well, guess what? The seller didn't have the same juice that he had 3 or 4 years previously and could bend you over. Guess what? You got to bend him over a little bit. So the market shifted from a seller's market to a buyer's market. And I think that's sometimes what drafts are. Last year, if you wanted a player, the New England Patriots laughed at the Giants for trying to trade up for Drake May. They laughed at him. Adam Peters wouldn't even pick up his phone. You know how fast Cleveland and New York would trade back for a haul of picks? So it changes the landscape depending on the market variables. And in football, the market variables, in the draft are the players. And these players are viewed as the kids would say, kind of mid, which is not fair because some of these players are going to go on to be stars. But that based on their college tape, that's how the league views them. I thought it would be really cool to be on your pod. You're definitely my favorite podcaster. I like this guy already. The Broncos have already shattered expectations. What do you think they need to get to the next level? Loving having Peyton and Patton combo at the helm. What do you think the Broncos will draft next week? I think he said it the other day. Running back. I think they're going to draft a running back in, I would guess, the second round. But I would say that Omari and Hampton, if Jeanty's off the board, would be at play for them to draft in the first round. I think one of the tight ends would be at play for them to draft in the first round. I think wide receiver would be at play to draft in the first round. I think they are going to go skill positions. So I would expect, I don't have the Broncos draft picks in front of me, but 2 of their first 3 picks, offensive skill guys, would be my guess. I'm a diehard Jags fan. I want Jeanty at pick 5. I know you've been critical of the idea and the Jeanty should be considered a top 5, 6, 7 pick. But in my estimation, he's easily the best player left remaining in the draft once you get to pick 5. I'm sorry, but I have just witnessed Saquon and CMC carry their offenses to Super Bowls over the past 2 seasons. I understand that it's considered bad value to draft a running back that high, but you could also look at it from the opposite perspective and think when Jeanty finally has to get paid, at least you don't have to dish out a massive contract. Also, receivers get paid way more than running backs and touch the ball way less. So what are your thoughts? Well, I don't view him as good as Christian McCaffrey or Saquon Barkley coming out of college. So Saquon Barkley went 2. Christian McCaffrey, I think, went 8. I view both those guys as much better prospects. Like, I think they both, drafting a running back that high is pretty crazy, but I would take ranking one coming out of Penn State, one coming out of Stanford, and one coming out of Boise. To me, he's third on that list, just using those 2 examples. But using your example of them carrying teams to playoffs, I wouldn't say Saquon or Christian carried their team to playoffs, right? Their defenses were good. The quarterbacks had good years or good games. Purdy had a good year. Hurts had good games, and when it was really important, played well. But they didn't get drafted by the Niners or the Eagles, right? The Niners traded for Christian, a second and a third round pick, and a fourth, I think. So they traded a lot. And the Eagles just signed Saquon Barkley. So is your guys' offensive line good? We saw Jeanty go up against Penn State, who obviously has an awesome defense, especially a good front. And Boise is not going to have the offensive line relative to their defensive line and kind of got overmatched. And Jeanty couldn't do that much. Saw the same thing happen with Saquon in New York. And listen, I feel like I love the player. But I've seen a lot of people are like, even just recently, if you're comparing him to Barry Sanders, like, I'm sorry, I'm out. It's like Emmitt Smith was small. So that's our comp, Emmitt Smith. We're comparing him to Emmitt Smith, who I'm pretty sure came out of Florida. Didn't Emmitt Smith win the Heisman? Obviously, Barry was like one of the greatest college running backs of all time at Oklahoma State. Like, if that's your comp, then it's like if Cam Ward's comp is Patrick Mahomes, we got problems. Let's make normal people comps. And it's like, yeah, he breaks a lot of tackles. Well, yeah, New Mexico, Fresno State, San Diego State. That is not like the NFL players. It's just not. So, and if we compare him to Jahmyr Gibbs, also a shorter player, well, I would take Jeanty and Tyler Warren because that's what they got. They got Jahmyr Gibbs and Laporta. The other thing is Jahmyr Gibbs is an elite wide receiver. Jahmyr Gibbs, like CMC, like Alvin Kamara, like some of these wide LT and Marshall Faulk, they could just play wide receiver. Jahmyr Gibbs could just play wide receiver, right? Can Jeanty? Because to me, Jeanty's much more of a running back, a little bit more like Saquon. Well, Saquon's like one of the fastest players in the league. Jeanty wouldn't even run a 40. So I just think this time of year, it sucks because you can have a really unreal prospect. But we just got to ask like critical questions. I was going back. Saquon ran a 4.40 coming out of college at 233 pounds. And in the Big Ten, ran for 4,000 yards and 43 touchdowns. I just think comparing Jeanty to Saquon or Barry Sanders feels fucking insane. I mean, insane. If he is, then he'll be one of the greatest picks of all time because he'll go somewhere between 5 and 12 and become Barry Sanders. So if he's Barry Sanders, then yeah, I'd take him if I was the Jags. I just think it's pretty risky taking a running back from Boise State at 5 overall, even in a bad draft. I'd rather just take, I don't know, Michigan's defensive tackle. That worst case scenario, I know I'm probably getting a solid player. We have seen running backs not work out. I thought maybe you would add this to the mailbox, aka I call it the mailbag, but we can call it the mailbox. What do you think constitutes a draft bust? Cleveland media still maintains that Baker was a bust, while Tampa city and locker room loves him. Is it possible both are true? He was a bust for Cleveland, being that he was taken at number 1, yet he was going to have a very successful career as a Buck, with one more contract extension that he'll hold all Tampa quarterback records. I think to be a bust, you have to be a bad player. So a bust isn't just like Cleveland's problem. Baker Mayfield would have had to be a bad player. Like a bust is Trey Lance. Like that's a bust. Like that's just, he's just not good enough to play in the NFL. But the 49ers drafted Solomon Thomas, number 3 overall. Solomon Thomas is going to have like a 14-year career. Now, it was a missed pick by the 49ers, but Solomon Thomas is not a bust. Baker Mayfield is not a bust because he's gonna make Pro Bowls, but it was the wrong pick for Cleveland, or it was a miss because he didn't get a second contract for them. So I think most players fall under that category, right? Because the percentage of guys that sign contract extensions, it's like 10 to 15 guys a team, right? I draft and then I sign to a contract extension. We'd have to do a study on that, but it's not that high. The Eagles do it a lot, right? Lane Johnson, guys, Jurgens, Dickerson, Jalen, Goddard, Devontae Smith, right? They have a crew of guys that they drafted and they extended. Those are hits. But to me, a bust is a guy that I draft and then he sucks. For the Eagles, Danny Watkins. Draft him, not good enough, out of the league. But a miss is like, well, this guy stays in the league. He just didn't work out for me. That is not a bust. So that's how I would compare that. Can Nico Harrison shut up about the Luka trade? I don't want to hear any more about defense or how he didn't know how important Luka was to Dallas. I used to be told this a lot. It's actually worked out to my benefit, but I talk for a living. I've always talked a lot. And when you're young, sometimes, your parents, your teachers or whatever don't want to hear what you have to say. And, my dad, we used to butt heads sometimes because I was a big have to have the last word. And obviously he's the dad and doesn't like that. So you get told to shut up. Don't say anything more. Sometimes that advice, it's like, just don't say anything more. You're better off going no comment. But his comment today in his end of the season press conference that he didn't know how much Luka meant to the city, that's a tough one. Question for the bag. I've been interviewing for many manufacturing engineering jobs lately. And despite having a great resume, I'm having trouble landing the job. Do you have any advice for do's and don'ts when interviewing? Thanks. I'm not a great person to ask. I'm 40 years old. Not considering like college, like interviewing for stupid jobs. Had one real interview in my life, and that was with the Eagles. Your boy got it on the spot. Well, I had to go through the interview, but didn't leave without getting the job. So I've interviewed people when I was working with Philly, or at least helped, again, low level positions. It just depends. Like if you're really, really young, I would just I don't have I'm actually the wrong person to ask. I really am. I had a good friend who's married. She's my good friend as well. She's really impressive, and she left a company pretty recently to get a job with another company, and the company wanted her to interview. And when she showed up, she didn't bring anything. And I think when the interview started, they asked her like, "Did you bring a resume or whatever?" She's like, "No, you guys wanted to talk to me. I didn't start this." She realized like after a minute, she's like, "That was a pretty bold thing to say, but it worked." Like, damn, this chick means business. She's like, "You guys want me. I didn't call you up." And so like I think there's a balance of if you're young, you don't have anything going, you need them. You go in, bright eyed, bushy tails, try to sell on energy and passion. Because for the most part, people young, their resume ain't going to be as good as you think it actually is when you walk in there with that piece of paper. Now, once you get to my age, 40s, your 50s, and you've been doing something for a long period of time, and you have a lot to fall back on, a lot of experience doing whatever you do, then I think you can kind of be cocky a little bit in those. But I don't have great advice just because I haven't been a part of interviewing really. Um, so good luck. I I imagine you're young. If you're hitting me up, you look kind of young. I would go in, try to sell on passion, energy, and do whatever it takes. Obviously, in your job, the manufacturing engineering, that's also something pretty specific. So maybe that's bad advice. Maybe it really is because something like that, I could walk into that job. They'd be like, "Oh, we like this guy. We want him part of the company." But you got to have the requisite skills to do that level of engineering. I mean, I went to Cal Poly in engineering school. I was drinking and partying and screwing around for 4 years, basically. The engineers were in the library working their ass off. So it's whatever you have done to become what you've become, your degree. Like I'd be proud of it and use to your advantage. Like I'm ready to go. I not only think I know what I'm doing, but I can help this out and learn whatever you need me to know, and I'll be ready to rock and roll and dominate the engineering field. So good luck to you. I'm in my first job post graduating from my master's. Currently, I work in a job that I don't like, is an hour drive to and from, where my boss does unprofessional things like yelling at meetings with clients. Jeez, what a wild card. I have an interview coming up next week with a great company back home. How would you approach leaving my current job should I be offered the position? I think if you are in a position where you respect the people who you work with, right, and care about the lasting relationships, even if they're not guaranteed to pay off in the future, I think you just approach it how everyone else approaches it in the company, right? You give your 2 weeks, you let them know, you be very professional about it. If you think this guy is a complete loser and they've treated you shitty and you don't care and you're pretty confident that, like, whatever, I wouldn't really worry about it. Whatever the protocol is, give them your 2 weeks or you can just quit whenever. I don't exactly know what your situation is, but I would I wouldn't say a peep until I got the job, and then once I got the job, I would spend much time thinking about it besides just letting them know you're leaving. You want to get away from this wild card, that's for sure. How much do organizations consider division opponents when it comes to the team building process? I think it really used to matter, like really mattered back. You heard so many old school people in the 80s and the 90s, in the 2000s. I do wonder with 17 games, now 18 games, if it's a little less at the forefront. Not that it's not important. Like if you're playing the Eagles, you better have a good offensive line. Like if you can't block, if you don't have good guards and centers, like Jalen Carter's going to kill you. Nolan Smith's going to come off the edge. If you don't have guys that can tackle, how are you going to stop Saquon Barkley? Right? How are you going to, if you don't have a corner, like how are you going to cover AJ Brown and CD Lamb and Terry McLaurin? But I also think if you got 18 games, that's six of them. I wonder if that's changed a little bit. We used to talk a lot about it when I was with the Eagles. I think good teams kind of find a balance. But I do think if you like listen to a clip of Al Davis talk in like 1992, it felt like that was a driving force in his draft philosophy for building the Raiders. I don't. I watch a lot of GM press conferences and clips. I, it doesn't feel as like prominent as it once did. I probably gave terrible interview advice. I'm just the wrong guy to ask on that one. Especially like if I were to interview someone doing this, it would be more like passion. But some jobs, like, yeah, we need a financial planner. Like you either know what you're doing or you don't. I wanted to get your thoughts on Travis Hunter playing both ways. I understand he's a freak athlete, but I'm just wondering from a team standpoint, is it even possible with team meetings and practice, the kid would be running himself ragged trying to do both? I'm wrong. Maybe I'm wrong, but it doesn't seem like it would be the best for him and whoever drafts him. I thought John Harbaugh, who has been around football his entire life, his dad was a coach, his brother was a player. He started coaching immediately after he was done playing at like Miami of Ohio. He's coached Hall of Famers. He's been to Super Bowls, MVPs. He's seen it all. And he's like, there's just not enough time in the day. It is so hard to be good. I mean, think about the best athletes we talk about in any sport. How meticulous, how detailed they are, how much effort goes in to being great at what they do, right? And football specifically, when so much of it is about mental preparation in, you said team meetings, well then unit meetings, which is if you're a DB, the DBs, side of the ball, like offense or defense, the way you practice in the unit you practice with. Anyone that's been to practice or played football in like high school knows O line's here, D line's here, DBs, wide receivers, like everything is separated by your group, and then your group who you would go against, linebackers, running backs, O line, D line, quarterbacks, throw with the wide receivers and the DBs, the special teams. It's all segregated. So it'd be very difficult, I guess, if you're a wide receiver and a DB, you take one rep at DB, one rep at wide receiver, but you'd be getting lapped by the other guy that was drafted in the fourth round who's only focused on wide receiver. And 2 years in, he's going to improve. I mean, how often do we see guys like the guy goes in the fourth round? All of a sudden, he's Terry McLaurin. Happens all the time. So, the famous football saying is you're either getting better or you're getting worse. No one stays the same. It's impossible to get better if you don't put all your chips in the middle of the table at that thing. So I think John Harbaugh said it perfectly is like, there's just not enough time to be great at both. One is going to regress. So what I think is most realistic is you try to dominate at corner DB and then play some wide receiver. But I don't think that you could play, because I think that it's been reported on that he was with the DBs in college, right? That's where he spent most of his time. And then he would just play wide receiver because he knew the plays. I don't think you could do that in the NFL. I really don't. I think it's going to be very, very difficult. And I'm not trying to be negative Nancy. I fucking loved watching him play. It was awesome. He's way tougher than he gets credit for as a tackler. He made one, I forget who they were playing, Baylor, some game this year where he caused like basically the game-winning fumble at the goal line. He's a stud. I think it was Baylor because it was overtime. It was the game that Shador threw the game-tying touchdown rolling to his left. And I just don't think it's possible. I really don't. He could do it, but to maximize his career and to become like ultimately his goal when you draft him, if the Browns take him, if the Giants take him, he's going in the top 2 or 3 picks, is to become a superstar. And I think the only way you become a superstar is by fully focusing on the one thing. It's the only way to do it. Like Justin Jefferson only focused on getting open. It's his only thought. So my routes, my footwork, my technique, the coverages, and then, how do I catch the ball? My hands, the jugs, then the mental preparation of getting my body ready to do all that. It's all focused on playing wide receiver. Same thing with defensive back. When you're a great defensive back, all you're focused on doing that. I just don't think it's possible. Not the highest level. If he had done it in the SEC, I would give it a little more. He did in the Big 12. I'm sorry, it's just not as good. He's great, but the conference kind of sucks.